They had been warned that American soldiers would show no mercy. Yet in March 1945, on a frozen Bavarian road, 412 German women collapsed barefoot in the snow. What followed shattered everything they believed about war, enemies, and humanity. The women had marched for days, fleeing east as the German front collapsed. Their uniforms were torn, their bodies exhausted, and their feet raw and bleeding. Each step left frozen traces of pain behind them in the snow. They were not soldiers but auxiliaries, clerks, nurses, and operators. Ordered to retreat without supplies, they were abandoned to the cold. Many had lost their shoes along the way, leaving them defenseless against winter. Among them was Liesel, a young typist whose feet had gone numb from the cold. Beside her walked Brigitte, an older nurse limping with one remaining boot. Neither knew where they were going, only that they must keep moving. For 4 days the column struggled forward. The weakest collapsed and were left behind. Hunger, fear, and exhaustion hollowed their spirits. They believed capture by Americans would bring cruelty, humiliation, or worse. Then came the sound of engines. Tanks and trucks approached from behind. Panic spread instantly. The Americans had caught up. The women froze, expecting violence, their fears shaped by years of relentless propaganda. The convoy stopped. American soldiers climbed down, young and weary. They stared at the women's faces, then at their bare, bleeding feet. Their expressions shifted from caution to something unexpected, shock and then concern. An officer gave a sharp command. The soldiers moved forward, but not with weapons raised. Instead, they did something unimaginable. Liesel stared in disbelief as one red-haired soldier removed his boots and offered them to Clara, a trembling young girl. When she hesitated, he gently placed them before her and stepped back in his socks. All along the road, soldiers did the same. One by one, they removed their boots and handed them to the women. The scene felt unreal. Enemy soldiers standing barefoot in the cold, offering warmth to those they were meant to hate. For a long moment, the women stood frozen, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. The enemy was not attacking. Instead, they were giving. The silence broke as Clara finally picked up the boots, tears streaming down her face. That single act sparked movement. One by one, the women stepped forward, accepting the boots with trembling hands. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed. Others wept openly, clutching the unexpected gifts. Liesel found herself face to face with a tall American soldier. Without words, he pressed his boots into her hands. She whispered her thanks in German, knowing he could not understand, yet feeling he somehow did. She sat on the frozen ground and pulled them on. They were too large but warm and solid. For the first time in days, her feet were protected. Relief flooded her, and she broke down in tears. Around her, the same scene repeated. Women in oversized boots cried with relief, while American soldiers stood barefoot in the cold, watching quietly. Their expressions carried both sadness and a quiet sense of purpose. But there were not enough boots for everyone. The officer quickly ordered more supplies. Soldiers returned with socks, blankets, and scraps of canvas, improvising coverings for those still barefoot. A medic knelt beside Brigitte and gently examined her wounded foot. The skin was torn and frostbitten. With careful hands, he cleaned and bandaged it, his touch steady and compassionate. Brigitte stared in disbelief as he worked. This was not the cruelty she had expected. When he finished, he looked at her with quiet apology in his eyes. She covered her face and wept. Soon the Americans began helping the women into their trucks. Those too weak to climb were lifted gently. Instead of prisoners facing punishment, they were treated like people in need of rescue. Liesel sat inside a truck surrounded by women wearing American boots. Outside, soldiers stood in socks on the frozen road. The world she thought she understood had turned completely upside down. The trucks carried them to an American field camp as evening fell. Rows of tents, warm lights, and the smell of cooking greeted them. Instead of fear, the women were met with order, calm, and unexpected care. They were taken first to a medical tent. Doctors examined their feet, cleaning wounds and applying bandages. Liesel winced at the sting but felt relief in the gentle professional treatment. Through a translator, she was told to keep the boots. The soldier who gave them would receive replacements. The words stunned her. Even this act of kindness would not cost the giver anything. After treatment, they entered a large heated tent filled with cots and blankets. The warmth alone felt unreal. Many stood still, overwhelmed by the simple comfort of shelter after days in the cold. Then they were led to a bathing tent. Steam filled the air above tubs of hot water. Clean towels and soap waited for them. The sight alone brought tears to many who had not bathed properly in months. Liesel stepped into the hot water and nearly cried out. The heat stung at first, then soothed her frozen body. Around her, women sobbed quietly as dirt, blood, and fear washed away. Some scrubbed their skin fiercely, as if erasing the past days. Others simply sat still, letting warmth return to their bones. For a moment, the war felt distant, replaced by simple human relief. One woman, Renate, suddenly laughed through tears, calling the moment madness. Being cared for by the enemy felt impossible yet undeniably real. No one disagreed with her. After bathing, they received clean clothes. Soft fabric replaced torn uniforms. Liesel dressed slowly, overwhelmed by how something so simple could feel like dignity restored. Dinner followed in a mess tent. American soldiers and German women shared the same space. Plates were filled with stew, bread and coffee, more food than many had seen in years. Liesel stared at the food in disbelief before taking a bite. The rich flavor overwhelmed her. Around her, women ate with urgency or wept quietly, unable to process such abundance after long deprivation. Brigitte broke down, thinking of her starving family back home. Guilt mixed with relief as they ate. Hunger won over hesitation, and they accepted the nourishment their bodies desperately needed. After dinner, the officer addressed them through a translator. They were prisoners of war, he said, but would be treated with dignity. They would receive food, shelter, and medical care until the war ended. Then he added something unexpected. He apologized. Apologized for their suffering and for the way they had been abandoned. His words left the women in stunned silence. That night, lying under warm blankets, Liesel could not sleep. The day replayed in her mind. Everything she had believed about the enemy had been shattered in a matter of hours. Her own army had sent her marching barefoot. The enemy had stopped, given boots, and offered care. The contradiction weighed heavily, forcing her to question everything she had been taught. In the days that followed, small interactions changed them further. Soldiers shared photos, smiles, and simple words. Barriers softened as both sides began to see each other as human. Liesel began to understand that kindness had no uniform. The Americans did not see enemies in that moment, only suffering people. That realization reshaped her understanding of the war. When the war ended, the women were no longer prisoners but survivors. They carried with them memories of compassion that challenged years of hatred and fear. For Liesel, the boots became more than protection. They were proof that even in war, humanity could prevail. A simple act of kindness had changed her life, and her understanding of the world forever.